Go to a country that is having much more trouble with the coronavirus outbreak, COVID-19, than we are, and that is the UK. We're joined from London by our good friend Brendan O'Neill, the editor of Spiked Online. Thanks for joining us, Brendan. Give us a sense of where the UK's at first up. You're with 28,000 deaths. You look like overtaking Italy as with the heaviest toll in Europe soon.
Yes, a lot of deaths, a lot of sickness. People are very worried about the illness, of course, and it's causing people to feel quite scared. I think there are a number of problems at the moment. Firstly, there is the practical problem of the disease itself and how we deal with that. But also there is this additional problem of a really deep-rooted culture of fear. And now numerous surveys and polls suggest that people in the UK, many people in the UK, will be reluctant to go back to work and reluctant to return to social life, even if the lockdown is lifted and even if the disease is suppressed in a successful way. So one thing that worries me now, as we come over the worst of the virus, the thing that worries me is that perhaps the COVID hysterics, particularly in the media, have been so successful that they have managed to make people too scared to go back to normal life. So government ministers here are trying to juggle two things. Firstly, the virus itself, and secondly, the huge question of how we get the economy and work life back in action once this has been worked out.
Yeah, there's so many balancing acts to pick through there, and of course Australia's experiencing them as well. First, there's that balancing act of the health response versus the economy, and then, as you say, there's that personal freedom versus the lockdown measures. And then there's this sense whether people should have the liberty to do as they like and manage their own risks versus people who just want to be completely risk-averse. Now, you've been quite critical of the lockdown in Britain. Do you think it's gone too far, too long already, notwithstanding the high death toll?
I think it has, yes. I think we need an urgent easing of the lockdown now, because the economic consequences in the UK, as across the world, are going to be catastrophic. There is a prediction that the economy will contract by around 13 or 14% over the next few months. That is completely unprecedented. That has never happened in the history of this country since records began. It's going to cause millions of people to be unemployed. It's going to cause absolute economic devastation. Also, there's the question of freedom. We do have to, as you say, we should be allowed to assess our own risks. You know, I'm increasingly of the opinion that we can't keep hiding away from this virus. You know, life is full of risk. There's the risk of illness, there's the risk of contagion, there's the risk of accidents, there's the risk of overeating, crashing your car. Life is full of risks, and we face those risks every single day. We can't continue hiding away from a virus that is out there, which has spread. Some people predict it has spread quite widely. We do have to get back to normal life and learn how to live with this virus, which has now become part of the family of diseases. And I think it's time for us to grow up, open our front doors and go back to work and play.
There is no doubt we have to learn to live with it. We're being told by all the experts that you can forget about a vaccine inside a year, 18 months, maybe longer. So you've got to find a way that an economy can function. It strikes me as weird when other times when we've had recessions, you'll find the left arguing that these are life and death issues, the economic well-being of working people, and we've got to do everything we can compassionately to look after them. And that's a good, strong argument. Yet at the moment, when you talk about these economic imperatives, so many on the left say, you know, you're putting dollars over human lives. I mean, there are human lives at stake when we talk about the economic impacts.
Absolutely. I think this idea that this is a question of lives versus the economy, which is an argument pushed by the left, is completely false. The economy is not some abstract thing. The economy is people's lives. It's our work lives, it's our livelihoods, it's how we make money in order to fund the health service and build houses. It's how we live. So this is lives versus lives, in fact. And the question that we now have to ask ourselves is, what's having a greater destructive impact on the future of human life? Is it this virus, or is it this unprecedented shutdown of economic life and the terrible consequences that will come from that? You know, the left in the UK, and I'm sure this is true around the world too, the left is very pro-lockdown. And in fact, this is the first recession in human history, I would argue, the first economic catastrophe in human history that the left has actively campaigned for. They have campaigned for this situation where the economy is completely brought to a halt and working people are decommissioned and put under house arrest. It's an utterly extraordinary state of affairs. And I think ordinary working people who want to go back to work won't forget what the left has done over the past few months.
Well, I think it's very important. I think it gets lost in the debate too often, the fact that this is a deliberately created economic problem. For good reasons, sure. We wanted to combat this pandemic, but everything we have done to the economy has been done deliberately through actions of government and society. Therefore, we're responsible for all the consequences and we need to be very careful. We're about to test that in Australia. You must look at Australia and see our low level of deaths and infections and wonder why we haven't lifted all the restrictions already. We're about to hear on Friday about that staged process, but I think people here will get pretty frustrated pretty quickly if we don't start to open up this economy.
Yeah, absolutely. And I have been thinking of that about Australia because you guys are far luckier than us in terms of the impact of the virus. And I think the lockdown in Australia has been quite severe, also in New Zealand. I see Jessica Ardern saying that, they won't be able to open their borders, even for tourism, for quite a long time. I think this actually reveals some of the naivety around this virus. The fact is, the virus is out there. The only real solution to the virus is herd immunity. Now, you either get herd immunity by allowing the virus to spread through the population, which is very risky, and you have to take measures to mitigate it. That's what Sweden is doing. Or you have a vaccine. Those are the two ways to achieve herd immunity, and that's the only successful way to deal with a virus like this. And I do think that nations that think they can lock the virus away in a cupboard and it will just disappear, there's an extraordinary naivety there. So we do have to get the economy back on track. We do have to go back to work, and we do have to prep ourselves for the fact that people will be ill and the health service, there will be big demands on the health service. But that's part of life. And I think the sooner we get realistic about that, the better off everyone will be.
Brendan, thanks for your perspective.
Thank you.